Kathryn Haugh is the principal of Springfield Primary School on the edge of the dividing line between the opposing communities in the heart of Belfast in Northern Ireland. She's just completed her 18th year in the post. As well as a Master of Education, Kathryn is qualified in early education and Montessori theory and practice. In total, she has almost 40 years of experience in primary school, classroom and management. And I want to share with you, Kathryn, I am by profession a teacher. It is my great honour to welcome a fellow teacher to the podium. And she'll be joined by Andrew, who's going to help with her PowerPoint. So I might take this opportunity to introduce Andrew as well, and he'll just follow on. Andrew graduated from Queen's University in Belfast with a degree in theology and English, a postgraduate certificate in education and a Masters of Education from the University of Ulster in Belfast. He's the head of computer education and a pioneer in forgiveness education. And he's a key player in linking his own Protestant primary school with 2 local Roman Catholic primary schools. So I'll ask Andrew to follow Kathryn about a further intervention from myself. Thank you, Kathryn and Andrew, teachers.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to give you a very warm welcome and greetings from the governors, the parents, the staff and all the pupils of Springfield Primary School in Belfast in Northern Ireland. Now, just in case you didn't know, Northern Ireland is a small country and it is part of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom makes up 4 different countries. We have England, we have Wales, we have Scotland, and we have Northern Ireland. Now, I might sound very biased, but Northern Ireland is a very scenic country. It's very beautiful. It's very green. This is our beautiful north coast. This is the Musselton Temple. This is our heritage site up at the very top of the country, and this is called the Giant's Causeway. And then Belfast itself is a hustling, bustling, thriving city. This is our port of Belfast, where a lot of shipbuilding has gone on in the past. This is our Titanic quarter. The Titanic was built in Belfast, just in case you didn't know, and it was perfectly fine when it left us. This is the middle of our shopping centre in Belfast. And then this is a picture of one of our very nice shopping centres. Now, Northern Ireland has just under 2 million people, and just under 500,000 of those people live in Belfast. About 45% of our people are employed, so that actually is quite low. And most of our people are employed in the public sector, such as hospitals, schools, transport, the police, shops, and so on. And yes, as I said, Belfast is a very thriving city. Here's some very nice pictures of it. That's the centre, that's our Queen's University. This is our beautiful City Hall. This is Belfast Castle. This is a picture of Stormont, where all our government takes place. And then we have the usual festivities and events that any normal city would have, and that's a picture of our Belfast Marathon. So I just want you to know that Belfast is a normal city and has all the normal things that go on in it. Now, education in Northern Ireland, I think, is of a very high standard. We have very good schools, ranging from the full age range, from preschool education right up to secondary schools. We have about 180 schools in the province, and about 30 of those are secondary schools, and 150 of those are primary schools. And about 43% of our population actually goes on to further education. And we have the highest number of people in the United Kingdom who go on to third level education. Now, our school is called Springfield Primary School. And I should have said, actually, in Northern Ireland, we are constantly looking at our education system and are we delivering the best possible service that we could for our children. And we're constantly looking at our curriculum and what the content of the curriculum and how we deliver it, when we deliver it, how we should deliver it. We're constantly evaluating what we do. And at the moment, as well as doing that, we're also looking at our school's estate, which is looking at, have we got the best value in our school buildings? And should we maybe knock a few buildings down, maybe amalgamate a few buildings, maybe update a few buildings? And the school in which I come from is an old building. It is 107 years old. This is it here. As you can see, it looks 107 years old. But recently, we have had a very nice extension put onto it because our school is successful in a very difficult conflict area of Belfast. And we're proud to say that. We've had the new extension put on with new facilities, new offices, a new classroom, a new foyer, and so on. And that is because the numbers in the school are going up. 10 years ago, the numbers, we would have had about 67 children in the school, but here we are 10 years later with approximately 180 pupils. Our children are happy. They are succeeding academically. We feel that they're very settled. We feel that the discipline in the school is very good. We have excellent relationships with the community, with our parents, and the teamwork within the school works very, very well. All our staff and all our ancillary staff work very well together for the good of the children. And that is despite the fact that we live in a very difficult area. And if I could just explain to you, Northern Ireland itself is only 100 years old. Because going back 100 years, Ireland was all one country. But now we are divided. And the northern part of Ireland, as I said at the beginning, belongs to the United Kingdom. Now, approximately 50 years ago, the so-called Troubles of Northern Ireland broke out when we had the nationalist Catholic population who objected to the northern part belonging to the United Kingdom. And the mainly Protestant population of the north wanted to stay part of the United Kingdom. So this has caused great conflict. and great tension. It has resulted in very, very difficult physical violence, and it was fought with the bullet and it was fought with the bomb. And approximately 3,600 people died during the Troubles. Now, I lived through all of that time, and I have witnessed myself what it was like in Belfast and in the whole of Northern Ireland to live through those very difficult, troubled times. But approximately 20 years ago, an agreement was signed called the Good Friday Agreement, where it was agreed between Protestant and Catholic to try and solve the difficulties through dialogue and through politics rather than through physical violence. So Springfield Primary School has lived through all of those difficulties, and our school is on an interface, and by that I mean our school is on the Protestant side of the road, and I look over to the other side of the road, and that is the Catholic nationalist side. The Protestants walk down the Protestant side, the Catholics walk down the Catholic side. And if I step out of school, I look immediately to my left and I see a huge wall, 20 feet high, which runs the length practically of Springfield Road. So it is within those difficulties that our children have been brought up. But I have to say that I see a huge difference in the attitudes of the people now that the Good Friday Agreement has been signed. There is a softness there now, there is an openness, there is a willingness now to keep that peace process, although at times it is very delicate. And at the minute in our country, we're going through one of those very delicate times. So we believe it's very important to educate our children in how to live with each other in that very difficult area that we're living in. And great efforts are being made by many people across all both communities and in all different sectors of the communities, including those who work in education. And we in school have taken on a number of projects over the last number of years. And one of the projects that we have taken on is the Forgiveness Education Programme, which we feel is making a major contribution to the attitudes and to the mindset of the pupils and of the parents. So I'd like to invite Andrew now, who is one of our teachers, to explain to us just exactly what goes on practically in the classroom.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to listen to a first-hand account of how forgiveness education and the practice of forgiveness has impacted the lives of the children in Springfield Primary School and indeed in our local community. I've been invited here, as you're aware already, to just give a brief outline of how we use forgiveness in school, what we're doing with it at the moment, and how we see that developing into the future. As a teacher in Primary 4, or Grade 2 for our American friends, I can say with great assurance that I have seen the impact of forgiveness education in the life of our school, the lives of our children, the attitudes of our parents, and indeed with the peace and reconciliation efforts between our local schools in a very divided community. With a push towards understanding our own conflict and working towards building relationships, forgiveness as a discipline and a teaching concept has allowed for a common ground on which to start building. In the words of JFK, children are living messages we send to a time we will not see. And it's with this in mind that we want to explore together the messages which we are trying to equip our children to take into the future. So to begin this session, I want to share with you some of the quotes taken from recent staff questionnaires issued to teaching staff in Springfield Primary School. And as you will see from these statements, they clearly indicate how much of an impact forgiveness education has made upon our school. One staff member noted that forgiveness education gives children the skills to enable them to forgive each other. It really does help them to see past difference and begin to celebrate it. Further to this, another staff member noted that they had seen a reduction in the amount of incidents happening in the playground and a reduction in the anger of children who have a tendency to vent and react in an inappropriate way. And I'm sure you can imagine what that means. According to another teacher, arguments and disputes were much easier to sort out as children were able to draw on discussion and scenarios from the stories to work out the best course of action. And it is of course in light of statements like these that we as a school then decided to fully implement the teaching of forgiveness education into our weekly timetable. As a curriculum, forgiveness education meets the requirements set out by our government for personal development and mutual understanding in Northern Ireland. And here are just some of the statements which forgiveness education correlates with. Children should be equipped with and develop an ability to cope with difficult situations, an ability to work effectively with others and to take responsibility for themselves. They should develop insights into society and other countries, or other cultures, our interdependence and the need for mutual understanding and respect. And finally, they should develop a knowledge and understanding of the challenges and opportunities they may encounter in an increasingly diverse society. And that is exactly what we believe as a staff that forgiveness enables them and equips them to do. As Kathryn has already said, as a school living with a physical reminder, and these are the gates just below our school, which are shut in the evenings, we can't pass through them between the two communities. Living in the midst of this post-conflict Belfast, it was of even further importance that we took this step towards providing children with the tools to move past the bitterness and the hatred that is instilled in so many. In the words of Anne Landers, it's not what you do for your children, but what you have taught them to do for themselves that will make them successful human beings. Or to quote another famous philosopher, Dr. Seuss, a person's a person, no matter how small. As such, we as educators feel that the place to start the process of reconciliation is not around a political table, it's not in our parliamentary buildings, but rather in the classroom with the youngest members of our society. Because in the words of Frederick Douglass, it is easier to build strong children rather than to repair broken men. It is therefore with this in mind that we now turn to think about how a forgiveness lesson plans out in the classroom. In terms of the curriculum itself, forgiveness education at Springfield Primary School begins at kindergarten level, or primary 2, and is continued to grade 5 level, or primary 7. The curriculum does continue past this, and I think we're due to hear this afternoon of some of the uses of forgiveness education in secondary level. As children progress through the key stages, each year builds upon what the children already know, and as such serves to reinforce and regularly impose the concept of forgiveness to the children on a yearly basis. As you can imagine, for primary 4, which is the class which I teach, those children are around 7 and 8 years old. One of the biggest selling features of the curriculum is that we use the Disney stories such as The Fox and Hound, Cinderella to help introduce and lead our discussions. And as Robert indicated earlier, all of the lessons are built around stories, experiences which the children can relate to themselves. Because the children have known and grown up with these stories, they are able to easily put themselves in the situations which the characters find themselves in, and such empathise and understand accordingly. Through hearing the stories, discussing the main ideas, empathising with the characters and completing the learning activities, the children are drawn into the curriculum forgiveness, and as such the language and living out of the concept becomes second nature to them. Let us now look at one of the lesson plans in more depth. And this is one which Robert has already referred to. So hopefully I'll draw something different now. The primary four, the typical first lesson begins as a person is a person. And the lesson begins with a teacher-led session where the teacher outlines the main concepts of the lesson. And this is seen as an example in Lesson 1, A Person is a Person, which begins by exploring the concept of inherent worth, as Robert has already said, or deep value of all people. It begins by teaching the children to believe that inherent worth, the worth which they possess, is a natural part of all people. And as such, it can't be earned or taken away. And that is something which children need to be taught nowadays. It's something which they're not growing up with, this idea that they are valuable. We come across so many circumstances where children doubt their worth, they doubt their value, and because of maybe things which they've been through before even coming to school. And we teach our children that it's not dependent upon outward appearance, their personal possessions, their position in society, their place of residence, their personality, or their cultural or religious group. We develop the idea that although people are different in many ways, these things are not things which should divide them, but rather which can be positive in that they give each person a unique quality and can enrich their lives and indeed the lives of others around them. After our initial introduction then to the main concepts, we then introduce the book, the story, or the DVD which we will be using to teach the lesson. As children listen to the story or watch the DVD, they are encouraged to look for worth or value in the main characters, and as such this ensures that the children are constantly engaged throughout the reading or the watching. When we complete this, it is then that we begin our discussions. And as a teacher, I must say this is probably the most profitable part of the lesson, certainly in my experience. The children challenge me in my thinking, and they challenge each other in their thinking as they discuss the concepts and the questions together. I've come to see that because we see people in light of religious difference and social constraints, we forget that our children have not been conditioned in this way, and as such they can teach us a lot as adults about how to relate to each other. Here are some of the questions which we would come across in a typical lesson. Thinking of the fox and the hound, who typically should not be friends together, a fox and a hound. We ask, why is it unusual for a fox and a hound who are so different to still be friends? When the hound is angry with the fox, does that change the value which the fox has? So thinking about whenever some sort of incident has happened, when something has occurred, that there's a breakdown in relationship, we think about, does that actually change the fox or the hound as a person, and does that impact on their value? Then we move on, we relate to the children. Do all people have deep worth? Do they have value? And then finally we bring it down to the one child. Do you have deep worth? And sometimes that's an interesting question to ask. Some children will be very confident and will tell you that they have more worth than gold. And other children will sit back and say nothing. And you know that those are the children who are really struggling with understanding that they have value. So by working from the problem to seeing that the worth is not determined or influenced by the problem, therefore allows the children to apply the worth and the story of the characters to their own lives. As children begin to see themselves as having deep value, this has an effect obviously on how they see themselves and how they react and relate to others around them. So when we finish the discussion, they then begin to complete an activity connected with their learning. Just want to show you some examples of activities which we have chosen, and some of these were adapted from the curriculum guide to suit our classroom. Using the idea of a patchwork quilt in one of the lessons, because money is obviously very tight, we couldn't afford to buy the material, so we used paper and we turned it into a patchwork jigsaw. And we made a jigsaw of a class, and each child was given a piece of the jigsaw to write or draw about what forgiveness actually means to them. As such, then, we were able to talk about how all of the pieces are different and unique, and yet they all come together to form this jigsaw, to form this masterpiece. Let's have a quick look at some of the pieces in detail. Here's one piece. Now, I can't read that. It says, I think forgiveness is like thunder and lightning, and then the sun comes out. So that's a child understanding that when we are in conflict with each other, there's this idea of thunder and lightning. And then when we forgive each other, when we resolve that conflict, then the sun comes out. It says at the bottom, when you have an argument with your friend, I am free to forgive him. Again, drawing out the importance that forgiveness for the children, that they are able to engage in forgiveness when the sun comes out, but also it's a choice and something which they themselves must choose together. These are super concepts to be teaching our children to take into their adult lives. In a further activity then, we encourage children to think of a little story or a little scenario where an argument or a disagreement breaks out, and to end their scenario with forgiveness being accepted. And here are some of the pieces. I'm not going to read through them, but you get a rough idea of what's happening in them. Just want to focus on this last one for a moment. It is clear from this one that the child understands what is going on here. At the end of their little story, it says they promised not to fight again. The child was realizing that to show that you really are forgiving someone, that you actually want to be reconciled, that there has to be a change in the heart, that you have to vow to not do that again. Now, we teach the children that they may hurt you again, and then we can forgive each other again. But there has to be some sort of remorse and some sort of turning away from what they've done. To finish our lessons then, we draw our pieces of work together and we showcase these to the rest of the class. And this again gives the children a chance to describe what they have been learning about forgiveness during the lesson, and also it gives a chance for the quieter children who usually sit in the corner to speak about what they have been learning as well. This is just a snapshot, of course, of what forgiveness education looks like for 7 to 8-year-olds. And it's not the whole story of what we do. When we brought in forgiveness education as a curriculum to our school, we began to wonder really how much of a difference we could make just teaching our one school about forgiveness. So we started to look out into our community as a whole, thinking about both sides of our divide, our Protestant side and our Catholic side, the schools which are within walking distance of each other and yet never mix. Therefore, having previously strengthened a link with a school just beside us, St Clair's Primary School, which is a Catholic school, we approached them about the possibility of introducing forgiveness education into their school as well. That was back in 2015, and since then our relationship with St Clair's Primary School has been significantly strengthened. The Primary 4 teacher, Mrs Tracy Logue, and myself began teaching the lessons at the same time each week in our classrooms. Every second week we would use Skype to link up with each other and allow for some class discussion on key questions which had popped up that week. Further to that then, we began to bring our children across the peace wall, across this physical dividing wall, 3 times a year to allow them to physically meet the children who they were seeing online and to mix and communicate with them. And here are some photos of our meetups. So you can see the children, St Clair's are in the purple uniform, Springfield are in the navy. And we set about completing little activities together in groups, which would come together and create a final masterpiece as well. This is Mrs. Loeb, the teacher from St Clair's, who I've struck up a great friendship with, and that has been part of why this has worked as well. And there's myself. During our times together, we usually complete an activity, which we then take back a copy each and display in our classrooms. During this particular visit, half of the group created forgiving hands for a forgiving tree, and the other half completed a square for a class quilt. Here are our finished products. It says on our tree, we have many branches, but we are all part of one tree. And each child was able to get what's the word? A trace. They were able to trace around their hands and to design their hand. It could have been a bit about them, it could have been what they found for what they had learned about forgiveness, or indeed it could be something which they had learnt from someone else in the other school. And there's just part of our quilts, St Clair's kept the rest. This is a little part on our door. Again, each child was able to draw a picture of what forgiveness meant to them. Further to this, we established an online shared page together where we upload photos of our meetups, and we encourage our children to log on at home and contribute to the class discussion for the week. And we find that this was a very subtle step of bringing our work on forgiveness into the home, which meant that parents were actively engaging in forgiveness education as they work alongside their children to supervise them, not only using the internet, but also to post and upload their comments. Just one way of starting to develop our work with our parents as well. In February 2017, we featured on the Education Authority in Northern Ireland's news desk pages with an article on the work of our classes completing together, work together in forgiveness. The news reporter noted how our politicians should stand up and listen to the children who were paving the way in Northern Ireland for peace and reconciliation. So now that we've come full circle and I've given you a little brief outline of forgiveness education in primary 4, I want to finish with the quote we began with. Children are living messages we send to a time we will not see. As we equip our children with tools to face these challenging situations, although we won't see this future, we can be assured that a change can take place. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. And what resonances for us here in this part of the world. I was fascinated to see the so-called peace wall. Please God, all our walls will become peace walls, but I wasn't aware that there's still one in Belfast. And a challenge for all of us to know that these physical walls still exist. The other thing, the image of the hands. We have what we call a Dula Shani, a bilingual school here, and its organisation is Yad, hand in hand, and they're images of these common hands, and I think reaching out the hand in friendship. Of course, there's so much more to say about this morning when Father Eamon Kelly welcomed us yesterday morning. He started by saying that we were all going to have heart surgery here in this conference. And my heart has been moved and changed already. Yesterday, my heart was just bursting hearing our religious speakers speak so passionately about the place of forgiveness. And then my heart was so moved by Ibtisam's personal story. Today, my heart was actually broken 3 times. First, my heart was broken by Naftali's very moving story. And then by Abuna's personal story of his loss, an ongoing loss, that broke my heart again. And then my heart was broken a 3rd time, and I have to share this with you before we go to the break. My heart was broken because we are in Jerusalem, It's the capital city of Israel. Israel's the only Jewish country in the world. And yet if you look around this room today in our gathering, we have only a small minority of Jewish participants. And there are reasons for this, which we can't explain fully now. But when I heard the Shoah mentioned, the Holocaust, my heart was broken again, because that unprecedented and unrepeated, thank God, event in history. We've had many terrible genocides, and we haven't fully learnt the message, never again. But there's never since been, and please God, never will be again, 6 million killed just because they are who they are. That's unprecedented, that's unrepeated, and please God, it's unrepeatable. And my heart is broken every time I hear an allusion to the Shoah, to the Holocaust. And I think while we're dealing with forgiveness education in this place, it's really important that everybody here understands how heartbreaking that is. I hope not just for Jewish people. I hope for all of us. Because as Abuna said, we're actually all the children of Abraham, everybody here. We share a common heritage and we share each other's pain. And although we're running about 5 minutes behind our schedule, I do need to share with you a Jewish story today. The story is like this. There was a very, very wealthy prince who owned a tremendous estate. It was in Eastern Europe. And in Eastern Europe, you know what the weather's like. He used to ride around his estate in his carriage, which was studded with gold and diamonds. It was a great thing. It was pulled by 6 fantastic white horses. He'd drive around his estate, but it was Poland. One day, his carriage got stuck in the mud. Stuck in the mud. And he's whipping these white horses, and the more they pull, the deeper the wheels of the carriage go. A little Jewish man was passing by. He was actually like a serf on the estate, and he saw the carriage, and he eventually plucked up the courage. He said, "Excuse me, your lord, I really think that I can help you get the carriage out of the mud." And he turned to him and said, "You stupid Jew, get away from me. How can you possibly help me? Go away." But he was stubborn. He hung around. And as the owner of the estate made no progress at all on pulling the carriage out of the mud, he eventually went up to him again and he said, "Look, I really think I can help." "What, you still here? I thought I told you to get lost. But you know what? I've got nothing better to do. If you think you can get me out of the mud, it's over to you." So, "What do you plan to do?" he said. So the little Jew said, "You know, I've got here my cart and it's pulled by these 2 donkeys. Let me hitch up my donkeys. They'll do better than your 6 white horses." He said, "You idiot Jew. What do you think, that your 2 donkeys are going to do better than my 6 white horses? Come on, I'll show you. It's just nonsense." So the little Jew hitched up his 2 broken down old donkeys. One flick of the whip and the donkeys pulled the carriage out of the mud. The owner of the estate is absolutely amazed. He turned to him and he said, "How did you do it? Was it Jewish witchcraft? How did you do that?" He said, "No, there's no witchcraft involved at all. It's actually very simple. My 2 broken down old donkeys are brothers. So when I whip one, the other also feels the pain, and they both pull together. Your beautiful white horses, one pulls, 5 just stay where they are. That's the power of brotherhood. When we really feel each other's pain, then we can truly say that we are brothers and sisters of the Abrahamic tradition. And that's what we're trying to learn to do today, to share each other's pain. And I have to share with you my pain on hearing every time about the Shoah. We're now going to take a short break. We're going to resume at 11:20. The biscuits, cookies, whatever you want to call them, are kosher, halal. The toilets are to your right as you leave. I'm also taking this opportunity to welcome the group that has arrived since we began this morning. Thank you for being here, and we are delighted that you're here, and we hope you'll enjoy the rest of the day with us. Please take your time, but be back in the hall at 20 past sharp to resume. Thank you.